Hi everyone, in today's video we'll be looking at what's called the big three in the astrological natal chart, or the primal triad. So I'm sure some of you out there are aware of what the big three is. It's basically our rising sign, our sun sign, and our moon sign. And these three components are the key parts of our natal chart that are responsible for our day-to-day living. So from the moment you wake up, you have your breakfast, you go to work, you have your lunch, you come home, and then you go to sleep, right? These are everyday tasks. When that's all occurring, these three parts of us in our natal chart are active and they're in motion, and it's what pushes us forward to get things done. So the big three represents how we experience emotions, how we navigate the world, and how effective we are. And it's made up of the sun sign, which is our awareness, shown here on the bottom left. Our moon sign, which is our feelings or our feedback mechanism, which is what I like to call, shown here by the moon, and our rising sign, or the physical body, right? Also known as the ascendant, shown by ASC here. So these three components influence one another, and depending on how each one are doing, it will determine how effective we are in life, essentially. So let's look at each one. So let's start with the rising sign. So the rising sign represents the metaphorical doorway between your inner world and your outside reality. And it shapes your first impressions, your physical appearance, and your ability to navigate through life. So a good way to understand this is to think of your dress sense. When you're dressed well and you look very smart, for example, you feel good, and that feeling comes from the way you look, comes from the physical body. So that's your way of actually engaging with this part of yourself. So that's the doorway being opened. And in the same way, it goes the other way as well. So when you have an idea of what it is that you want to do, when you know, or when you instinctively understand what your rising sign is, you're able to make the right choices and be effective. So that's how the rising sign generally works. And when our rising sign is functioning well, everyday tasks are a lot easier to do, and we're just more self-aware of what works for us and what doesn't work for us. So for example, if you're starting a sport, right, you've got a choice between swimming and jogging, you instinctively know which one works for you without even having to have too much experience in each one. So if you're a Cancer rising or a water sign, you might find that swimming could be a better option, for example, roughly speaking. It's not always the case, but generally speaking, water signs generally like water sports. So they would choose that. So that's the kind of thinking that works here. And the better you understand your rising sign, the better you're able to engage in life and be very effective. When you don't understand it, you make the wrong choices, and you kind of are in a situation where nothing works, everything just feels so hard. So that's the rising sign in action. So next part, the sun sign, this is what connects up to our rising sign. It's our core identity. And it governs our conscious awareness and our driving force behind our actions and our ambitions. And in the body, the sun sign is represented by the heart and the circulation in the body. So the heart pumps blood. Blood is the life force, and that life force energizes the body and keeps it alive. And metaphorically, it's the same thing here. That life force is our vision for what excites us. So if you have a passion for something, right, if it's a particular job or a particular hobby, whatever it is, or a love for something, that's your sun in action. That's what's keeping you moving. That's what's motivating you. And once that motivation is there, your ability to move through it, as we mentioned before, or to navigate through it, is going to be so much easier because there's a driving force. And usually, the sun, when it's working well, it's very easy for you to have a vision or a dream for something and to shoot for it. And the sun sign represents the inner world, what it is that we want for ourselves internally in the future, and our outer world, which is what we see and the results that we're getting back. So we see the world through our eyes as well, and that's what the sun represents. And generally, a good way to understand this is if you've ever done an activity which you absolutely enjoyed, whether it was difficult or easy, that enjoyment enabled you to actually get a lot done and be effective. So that's a really good example of how to see the sun and the rising sign connect together. So the rising sign would be you interacting with the job or whatever it is that you're doing, and the sun sign is that love or joy for it, right? And that's how these parts work together. So that's the sun sign there. The next part is what's called the moon sign. So the moon sign reflects our emotional needs, our intuition, and how we process experiences. And it also represents our subconscious patterns that we've picked up from very early on in life, and even in our past as well. So very early past and very recent past. And in terms of the body, it symbolizes our physical and emotional digestion. So physical digestion would be our stomachs, breaks food down and puts that food into a different form to pass through the next part of the body where it will be used for nutrients. So metaphorically, it's how we digest situations and things, and through that digestion, it shapes how we absorb experiences. So in the same example I mentioned before, if you have a love for something, as I mentioned, if you've got a love for something, you're motivated to do it and you're effective. That motivation and that effectiveness is going to be absorbed. And that gets absorbed into the moon sign, and that passes into our subconscious, and that becomes a memory. And that memory will strengthen that joy for whatever it is that we're doing, and become more and more effective at it. So the moon is our feedback mechanism. Once we're in a happy state or we're in a state that's positive, our moon receives it, puts it into our body, metaphorically, and our body's able to motivate us and keep us in line with it. And so the effect of that is we're likely to just keep going and keep doing it. So another good example of the moon is action is think of a job or a situation that you once liked or were impressed by. Let's say it paid very, very well. As you started the job, something felt a bit off about it, but you continued doing it. That feeling of being off is that misalignment. Is a misalignment. That's your moon speaking to you. That's your moon saying, I don't like what you're doing. Please, when you get a chance, just get out of it and do something else. So normally when we don't listen to what our moon is telling us, over time, we become depressed and our motivation just starts to drop. So remember what I was saying, that off feeling is becoming digested, right? Whatever's digested, it gets stuck in our energy field or body, and it affects our performance. And I've experienced this before. I've been in work or jobs that were very, very impressive. They paid very well. At the beginning, it was very exciting, but there was something off about it. And over time, my performance just declined. And that was the part of me telling me to just get out of it. It was my moon speaking to me, telling me you need to change and do something else. And by ignoring that, it just affects everything. It affects the performance. So that's the moon in action right there. So let's bring it all together. So, as we discussed, the rising sign represents the physical vessel through which we engage in life and shapes our presence and our first impressions. When it's in check, when it's working well, we instinctively can navigate through life, as we mentioned, and we're in alignment with our purpose and our well-being. All right? Next part is our sun sign. It's our core essence that motivates us and keeps us going through life. When it's in check, we have a positive motivation and a purpose behind what we're doing, and that pushes us forward. Next part is the moon sign. This represents our inner needs and our emotional sustenance, and it's what keeps us balanced, and it's our feedback mechanism. When it's in check, we feel secure. That gut feeling is positive, it's correct, and we're comfortable in whatever it is we're doing. So these three components are the key to helping you essentially achieve whatever it is you want in life. As long as you're able to instinctively or consciously tune into these, your ability to make things happen will be a lot easier. Right? So let's look at an example. So we're going to look at a practical example here. So this is an example of everyday life, which I mentioned, from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep. In this case, in between that, we're choosing to go for a walk to the park. And what we're going to be doing is mapping out how these three parts would interact with our day-to-day life so we can better understand it. So when we go for a walk, what does the sun sign represent? The sun sign represents our core intention behind the walk, right? As I was saying before, it's our motivation. So it's why we want to go for this walk. What are we seeing in our mind? When we go for a walk, we want to, for example, have a picnic, see the beautiful trees, and really relax, right? That's our excitement, for example, for argument's sake. And once we've got that excitement in our minds, it's going to push us forward. So that's our purpose. That's the driving force for the walk, to have a picnic or to just enjoy ourselves, right? And the next part, the moon sign, these are our physical needs and our feedback mechanism. So in order to make this happen, and in order to make it possible, we need to make sure that we're comfortable, we're hydrated, and that we feel safe. Right? So as I was saying before, the experience of going for this walk, it needs to be digested in a way that's positive and that will keep us motivated to go for that walk. So, for example, if we just leave the home and we go straight to the park without having our water, having the comfortable clothes, and so on and so forth, we're going to be uncomfortable, we're going to be dehydrated, and we're not going to feel good. And once that happens, our motivation to go for this walk or stroll is just going to decline, and we're not going to be bothered anymore, and we'll just lose our spark for it. So it's very, very important to keep our needs and our comfort in check in this example. So that's the moon sign in action there. And finally, we come to the rising sign. So the rising sign represents our approach and our interaction. So it shapes how we want to go for this walk. Do we want to go for a brisk and determined fast walk, or do we want to go for a slow wandering walk? What kind of route do we choose to take? The scenic route or the faster route? So that's what our rising sign is. It's how we go about it. And if we have a rising sign that likes to be a bit slower, going for a fast walk is not going to really be a good idea, right? So we'd have to choose a style that matches the process behind whatever it is that we're doing. And that's the rising sign in action. The process is in how to actually get to the park. So this is a real life example of how these three parts work together. Okay, and so I guess the final question is, what are your sun, moon, and rising signs? So if you don't know what your rising sign, sun sign, and moon sign is, I suggest going to a astrological website where you can generate a chart. Astrology is a good one to start with. Put your birth data in there and it'll actually tell you. And once you understand what these three parts are, they shape your identity, your emotional world, and your approach to life. And understanding them will help you be more aligned to your true self, and you'll be able to navigate greater awareness. So that's it for the big three, or the primal triad. If you've got any questions, please feel free to put them below. Any comments, please feel free to put them below, comment below. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and talk to you soon. Thank you for watching.